Whether you realize it or not, anger is your friend. No, it's not the cheery, let's go have a beer kind of friend. Anger is your friend who's going to tell you straight to your face that you look like crap when you do. And they're going to tell you straight to your face that you're being obnoxious because you've been hanging out with that cheery beer drinking friend too much. So once you realize that anger is your friend, you can start to befriend it and you can use it to your advantage. It can steer you out of harm's way, just like that matter of fact friend will. However, in order to befriend your anger, you first have to establish some firm boundaries with it, just as you would with that blunt friend, because otherwise what's going to happen is that your well-meaning friend is going to become aggressive and it's going to start overstepping or bulldozing right over your wants and needs. So today we're going to talk about establishing those boundaries so that you can extend an olive branch to your anger, if you will. And we're going to do that by recognizing what our anger is trying to tell us. We're going to discuss two common reactions that most of us have when we feel anger. We're going to talk about some of the harmful effects of not using anger to our advantage. And we're going to then discuss a few mindfulness techniques that you can use to control your anger. Alright, so first, what is our anger trying to tell us? Well, you can think of anger as your check engine light on your car. So basically, it's trying to alert you to the fact that something's not quite right. It's trying to tell you that there's a problem so that you can identify it and get it fixed before it causes too much damage. And of course, just like your check engine light, you're probably going to ignore the signs at first. You're probably going to try to ignore your anger and hope it goes away. But sure enough, it's going to keep coming back on, just like that check engine light. Your anger is going to keep showing up whenever you're in that not quite right situation or you're in a similar situation until you decide to face your anger and use it to your advantage. Now, what kind of problems is our anger trying to alert us to? This is according to Juna Mustad, and I have no idea if I'm pronouncing her name correctly or not, but I watched a TED Talk of hers. It was really excellent, and it focused on making anger your ally, basically. She's a life and relationship coach. Oh, and there is a link to that in the narrative post. There's a link to that TED Talk. But she mentioned three things that your anger is trying to tell you. So either it's trying to tell you someone is trying to overstep your boundaries. And what are boundaries exactly? Because I've already used that term twice in this talk here. And I think it's a term that is somewhat overused and maybe people don't even really understand it. So I looked for a definition and I found one that really resonated with me from Z. Hereford at essentiallifeskills.net. And they said, personal boundaries are the physical, emotional, and mental limits we establish to protect ourselves from being manipulated, used, or violated by others. They allow us to separate who we are and what we think and feel from the thoughts and feelings of others. So basically, your anger is trying to tell you that someone's trying to manipulate you, use you, or violate you in some way. Number two, your anger could be trying to tell you that you have an unresolved trauma. And whatever's going on in the situation that you're in, there's something about it that reminds you of that trauma. So it's stirring up all these feelings of anger. So you might have something that you need to work on with that. Okay, and another thing that your anger is trying to tell you is that you are in denial about something. There's something that you need to face that you just don't want to face, and your anger is trying to urge you to come out of it and see the situation clearly. So your anger could be telling you that your boundaries are being overstepped, that you have an unresolved trauma, or that you are in denial about something. So when our anger is trying to tell us these things, we have two common reactions. And again, this is according to Juna Mustad. Two common reactions that we have when our check engine light goes on, if you will. One is that we erupt. And this means that we just go off the rails and we let anger hijack the rational part of our brain. And we know that we're mad and we're overreacting about something that might be small and we know it, but we can't help ourselves. And this is where we become aggressive, we start placing blame on other people, and could even become violent. Or the other reaction we could have is we could stuff the anger. We could deny that we're even feeling anger because we don't want to rock the boat, we don't want to be the bad guy, and really it's because we don't want people to see our shadow. So we suppress our anger. And if you're not sure what I mean when I say our shadow, I do have a separate post dedicated to talking about our shadow. It's called how to become your best self, embrace your dark side, so you can check that out to learn more about your shadow. Because I'm going to talk about it again here in a minute too. So neither of these reactions, either erupting or stuffing, is going to help us use anger to our advantage. And they're both being caused by our shadow, really. So the eruptors are showing their shadow, and they're showing that they don't know how to control their shadow, and they had not brought it into their consciousness, meaning that their reaction is really a subconscious one that they are not in control of. And the stuffers are trying to hide their shadow because they deem their anger an unacceptable feeling. So they're doing their very best to hide that part of themselves from other people and hide that they're feeling that way. Now, what happens if we keep reacting as either an erupter or a stuffer? What ends up happening to us? Well, ultimately, I think you will never be able to realize your full potential. And the reason I say that is because if you're an erupter, you're constantly telling yourself that you are at the mercy of your environment, that you have no control over your thoughts and feelings. So why would you even try to improve? Why would you even strive for personal growth at all if you have no control and basically the world is out to get you? Now, on the other hand, if you're a stuffer, you're constantly telling yourself that you are more committed to pleasing others than to your own personal growth. Plus, once you're done trying to bend to everyone else's wants and needs, you're not going to have very much energy for yourself to try to meet your own needs. So in both of those situations, you're not going to be able to realize your full potential. And if those aren't reason enough now for you to befriend your anger, I also want to talk about some health consequences that we have when our anger remains unchecked. And these I got from Everyday Health, and I'm going to kind of be reading them here, but both Everyday Health reported 7 different physical consequences of anger. So both erupters and stuffers have an increased risk of experiencing a heart attack or of developing heart disease, number 1. Number 2, one study found that erupters are 3 times as likely to have a stroke after an angry outburst. Another study found that unprocessed anger can actually weaken your immune system. Number 4, anger can exacerbate the symptoms of generalized anxiety, which a lot of people suffer from. And numerous studies have linked depression with anger, which I don't think is too surprising. But this one surprised me, that angry, hostile people tend to have significantly worse lung capacity, which is really interesting to me. And you can check out the full article from Everyday Health. I have a link to it in the narrative post, and it tells you why, but that is kind of interesting. And also, I think probably goes without saying, but repressing your anger can shorten your lifespan. So now we know a lot of reasons that we should really work on befriending our anger. But before we can do that, we have to learn how to control our anger in the moment. Because that's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? How do we control our anger in the moment? Because it's so difficult to control, because in that moment, your ego has taken over and the logical part of your brain has shut down. And I've been both an erupter and a stuffer in my life, so I know the consequences of both. I will just briefly tell you that I was trying to identify when I actually stopped doing this. I really don't remember, but I mean, I had a really bad temper when I was younger. I would throw things when I was a kid. In the narrative post, I mentioned that I would break mirrors and doors because I did. I would throw things at my mirrors for some reason. I would slam doors, and I did that even as a young adult sometimes. So I don't really know when I stopped, but luckily I stopped all that. But I also have been on the other side where you stuff your feelings and you do it for so long that you end up resenting people, and so that you end up either you're breaking physical objects or you're breaking hearts, one by doing one or the other. So we're going to talk about ways that you can befriend your anger so that you can stop doing that, so that you can use your anger for good, so you can use it toward your advantage, and so that you are not, hurting yourself and hurting others. But first, we're going to talk about a few baby steps that you can use to keep your anger in check in the moment, the next time that your anger is trying to tell you something. So the first thing you need to do is acknowledge the feeling and accept the fact that you are angry. Accept the fact that it's a perfectly acceptable feeling as long as you deal with it correctly. That alone would just kind of take the pressure off. Then you can slow your breathing, which I know sounds so silly and so trite, but it's really true because that you need to slow your breathing because it slows your whole body down. It takes it out of that fight or flight response. And breathing is actually the first thing that we forget to do when we're threatened. So after you do that, then you can relax your muscles a little bit because when you feel threatened, you get all tense, you clench your jaw, your shoulders, you tighten your fists, clench your fists. So just kind of let it all relax. And what that's doing is by taking those physical actions, you're telling your brain that you're not in a threatening situation. So you can calm yourself down. So now we can talk about befriending your anger. So how do you befriend your anger? Well, after you practice and perfect controlling your anger in the moment, you can move on to befriending it, or in other words, you can start listening to what your anger is trying to tell you. And I'm going to cite Juna Mustad one more time because she also suggested 3 ways that you can befriend your anger. That's not what she called it, but that's what I'm calling it. Number 1, she said you can name the emotion that you're feeling. And for some reason, recognizing what you're feeling and then actually putting a name to it, for some reason that actually slows the threat response in your body. And you might find that your feelings of anger are actually feelings of sadness, or maybe you're lonely or stressed or whatever. It might not even really be anger. It might just be manifesting itself as anger. And then the second thing you can do is you can change your reaction. So now that you recognize that you're about to erupt or stuff your anger, you can control how you react next. And Mustad suggests that you try feeling compassion toward yourself because in that moment you are hurting. And she suggests that you say something to yourself like, I'm hurting right now. How can I be kinder to myself? How can I be kinder to the people around me? And that would just get your brain thinking in a different way. And it's taking some of that pressure off yourself for feeling bad, for feeling angry about something and feeling maybe something's wrong with you for feeling that way. And just realizing you're human. It's okay to feel that way and showing a little compassion to yourself. And the third thing that you can do to befriend your anger is inquire. Or as I would say, stay curious. So it's time to listen to what your anger is trying to tell you with genuine curiosity. And ask yourself, what do I need to see right now? Because again, one of the reasons you're feeling anger is because you might be in denial about something. So what do you need to see right now? And what am I unwilling to face right now? But then, to truly befriend your anger, you're going to have to take it one step further and you're actually going to have to take some action. So whatever your anger is trying to tell you, once it tells you, you're going to have to actually take action on whatever it's trying to nudge you toward. And I'll give you one other quick tip. Now this one's from me, so not from Juna. But another quick tip to befriend your anger is you're going to need to spend some time alone to process these emotions and to work on getting that part of yourself under control. And you can find out how to spend your alone time productively by reading another post or listening to another post that I put together called 5 Superpowers You Gain by Spending Time Alone. Okay, now you know anger is actually your friend. I think we've established that, hopefully. And you know that it's really just trying to help you live the fulfilling life you were meant to live. Your job next is to figure out what your anger is trying to tell you, and then use that information to your advantage by taking action on it. And that might mean that you need to set some firm boundaries with people. It might mean that you need to work on healing some unresolved trauma in some way. Or it might just mean that you need to accept the fact that you need to make a change in your life. And of course, as always, I put a worksheet together for you guys, so be sure to check that out. The worksheet will help you summarize this video or audio, and it's going to help you go from inspiration to action. And until next time, stay curious.